Tonight on Nova, to the old weapons in the war on cancer are being added new treatments, new strategies, new understandings of cancer's cause to fight today's battles in the war on cancer. In this first of two Nova specials, we examine the controversy surrounding a new cancer treatment. Join Jane Pauley of NBC News as we spotlight a wonder drug on trial.
Major funding for Nova is provided by this station and other public television stations nationwide. Additional funding was provided by the Johnson & Johnson family of companies, supplying healthcare products worldwide. And by Allied Signal, a technology leader in aerospace, electronics, automotive products, and engineered materials.
It's been 16 years since President Nixon declared an all-out war on cancer. Since then, over 7 million Americans have died of the disease, and $20 billion has been spent on research to defeat it. There have been some victories. Chemotherapy, for instance, is saving the lives of many children and some adults who previously died of incurable cancers. But the harsh fact is that the overall death rate from cancer is not much different today than it was when the war was declared. Which is why there was great excitement a couple of years ago when an entirely novel cancer treatment began to show some spectacular successes against previously incurable cancers. The treatment involved rallying the body's own defenses against cancer with the help of a powerful new drug, interleukin-2. Within months, however, the therapy was being criticized as being too dangerous, too expensive, and not much more effective than existing treatments. Tonight, Nova looks at the scientific, medical, and human drama behind the attempt to turn a potent biological force into a useful new weapon in the war on cancer. The most heroic battles are fought by the patients whose bodies are the proving grounds of the new therapy. For all of us, the stakes are high, a possible revolution in the treatment of cancer. For the patients involved in the clinical trials, the stakes are their lives. Neville Cross has come to Boston's New England Medical Center from Toronto.
There's Mr. Cross. I have an appointment with Dr. Parkinson and Dr. Atkins.
Thanks. You can take a seat, Mr. Cross.
Okay.
He has malignant melanoma, an incurable cancer. He's well aware he's about to become an experimental subject.
Sounds corny. It's a little bit exciting, I guess, in a way. And when you know that you've got something that there really isn't anything available that would be an alternative, I'm quite anxious to do it, and as I say, there's a certain excitement in being involved in something new and that may lead to something. I'm starting to flow.
Neville's therapy centers on a new drug, interleukin-2. It's being used to boost his body's own ability to destroy the cancer within it by generating billions of cancer-fighting cells from his own blood.
So it's a good yield?
Yeah, we have 6 times 10 to the 10 cells.
What will happen when the cells are returned to his bloodstream is unpredictable. Probably they'll make him very sick. Possibly they'll cure his cancer.
What's the man? How are you?
Hello.
I'm fine, glowing all over.
Here are the cells you've been missing.
Oh,
They are.
I've been looking all over for those things.
Has he been premedicated?
Yeah.
Even though these are mainly white cells, they're a little pink.
Right,
That's because there are some red blood cells left in it.
right.
And this is really the
These are the
This is
treated
the
cells.
excitement.
Yeah,
That's
that's
right.
what it's all about.
The excitement because these cells, called lac cells, created from his own white blood cells by interleukin-2, represent the first genuinely new approach to cancer treatment since the war on cancer began. The battlefield now is Neville's body, where the confrontation between his lac cells and his cancer cells is just beginning. The man most responsible for devising the lac therapy is Dr. Stephen Rosenberg, head of surgery at the National Cancer Institute outside Washington. For 20 years, since he was a medical student, he's been searching for a new approach to cancer therapy.
Let's have another drape across here. We have three major methods for treating cancer today, and they are surgery, and with us 2,000 years, radiation therapy, the product of the early part of this century, chemotherapy, arisen in the last 30 years, perhaps. Now, those three treatment modalities are capable of curing a substantial number of patients who develop cancer, about half, maybe a little less than half. But there are almost 800,000 cases of cancer in the United States each year. About 475,000 Americans still die of cancer despite the best application of those three treatment modalities. And so we clearly need new ways to treat cancer. And what we're trying to do is to develop a fourth way to treat cancer, a biologic approach, an attempt to take advantage of the body's own immune defense mechanisms.
The idea of using the body's own immune defense mechanisms to fight cancer, instead of poisoning the cancer cells with chemotherapy or radiation, is an old one. Many approaches have been tried, none successfully. The key to the new therapy is using interleukin-2 to turn some of the patient's own cells into potent cancer killers outside the body. The process begins with removing the cells.
We're taking whole blood from the patient. It's coming into the machine and it's being separated into layers, and we're separating off the lymphocyte layer from the whole blood.
The lymphocytes are collected in this bag. Lymphocytes are white blood cells that play several key roles in fighting off foreign invaders like bacteria. Some lymphocytes make antibodies that latch on to the invader. Other lymphocytes directly attack and kill cells that don't belong, while still other lymphocytes call off the immune response. The coordination of this defense is the job of chemical messengers that shuttle between the lymphocytes. One of the messengers is interleukin-2. Rosenberg discovered that some lymphocytes treated with IL-2 in the test tube turn into cells able to kill cancer cells, spilling out their contents. Normal cells were left unharmed. He called these cancer killers lac cells. The discovery was immensely promising. The problem was that interleukin-2 was available in only minute amounts, produced by lymphocytes themselves. What was needed to find out if the test tube results meant anything for cancer treatment was a major new source of IL-2, preferably on an industrial scale. The breakthrough came when the biotechnology industry found a way to get the genetic blueprint for human IL-2 into bacteria. Growing in fermentation vessels like this, the genetically engineered bacteria can turn out large quantities of IL-2. The next step is to convert the crude paste into the pure drug.
Using large-scale fermentation techniques, we routinely make grams to kilograms of interleukin-2. And if you calculate that there have been under 11 billion people who have ever lived, and if you calculate that the body is able to produce only fractions of microgram amounts over a period of time, it's conceivable that using recombinant engineering that we have already generated more IL-2 than had ever been produced in the history of mankind. I'm not sure whether that's good or bad, but that's what we've done.
The ready availability of IL-2 meant Stephen Rosenberg could now make lac cells from lymphocytes in bulk and see if they attack cancers in living creatures. His first tests on mice showed that even extensive cancer could be cured by lac cells if the cells were given in combination with direct injections of IL-2. The time had come to begin testing the therapy on people. The rules governing human drug trials are strict. Only patients who have failed to respond to all known treatments can be used.
How are you doing today?
And in early trials, combination treatments, like the LAC plus IL-2 that worked best in mice, aren't allowed. The first 66 patients treated with either LAC or IL-2 failed to respond. It was only when Rosenberg got permission from the Food and Drug Administration to combine LAC and IL-2 that he saw his first success.
I certainly will never forget the first time that I saw the chest X-ray on one of our patients with colon cancer, whose tumor was shrinking. He had had 5 pulmonary metastases, lung metastases from a colon cancer that had spread to his lung. It was about 11 days after we had started therapy, and his biggest lung metastasis was barely noticeable. He had just come in for his follow-up visit. He was due to have his full lung tomograms the next day. That is a complete and detailed series of X-rays. And in fact, of course, moments after he completed having those X-rays, I went downstairs, and there on the view box we could see an X-ray after X-ray shrinkage of all of the lesions that he had. And in fact, of the 5 that he had, 3 had disappeared completely, and 2 had shrunk dramatically. And that was the first patient that we had seen that had responded to any form of immunotherapy.
Soon other successes followed. Kathy Donahue, 29 years old, from Minneapolis, was near death with a cancer that invades the lymph glands.
My legs were so swollen that I could hardly walk. I had egg-sized tumors at the tops of them that were blocking circulation. I had no energy. I really felt awful. And the doctors here were telling me that there wasn't an awful lot that they could do for me, that chemotherapy hadn't been able to accomplish much, and I was in such a debilitated state that they didn't feel as though it would be worthwhile to put me through any more chemotherapy.
Kathy came here to the National Institutes of Health to become one of the early patients to receive the LAC IL-2 treatment.
After the very first treatment, there was dramatic improvement. It was exceptional. In fact, I felt like a star at NIH. You know, I came up here, they flew me back a month after I'd finished my first treatment, and my legs were normal, my body was normal, I didn't have lumps everywhere. In fact, I couldn't find any. And so when the attending doctor examined me, he got really excited. He went running for Dr. Rosenberg, and I felt like a star.
Good. How about like this? Be sure everybody, you can see everybody.
These early and dramatic successes for LAC IL-2 turned Stephen Rosenberg into a star. This group photograph with the nurses of the intensive care ward where the therapy is administered is a staff souvenir. But in December of 1985, when Rosenberg published his first results, his face appeared on the cover of a major news magazine, and interleukin-2 itself was hailed as a major cancer breakthrough. Biotechnology companies that make IL-2, like Cetus, and here at Hoffman-La Roche, saw their stocks soar. Even though Rosenberg had treated only a few patients and had had dramatic success in only about 1/3, expectations were high. The need now was to confirm his results. 6 cancer centers around the country, including the New England Medical Center in Boston, were chosen by the National Cancer Institute to see if they could repeat Rosenberg's success. This team already had experience working with interleukin-2 and knew of its power to manipulate the immune system.
That is really industrial strength immunology.
Dr. David Parkinson is the medical director of the LAC IL-2 trials here. The 25th patient to be treated by the group is Neville Cross.
Okay.
That's good.
His melanoma, which started as a mole on his forehead, has spread to the side of his neck and his lung. He is an ideal candidate for LAC IL-2 therapy. Melanoma is one of the cancers that can sometimes be shrunk by the treatment. There is no known alternative therapy, and apart from his cancer, he is fit, strong, and determined.
Out of the first 300 or so patients who have received this therapy at various centers around the country, 3 patients have died. Because of that, we have to be very careful about the kind of patients we offer this therapy to. The risk of the experimental therapy has to be made known to the patient. It has to be suitable to the patient's condition. In my estimation, that's appropriate in Mr. Cross's case, and in his estimation, he is willing to undergo that risk for the potential but not proven benefits which the treatment offers. There's no question that he potentially could die during this therapy. He understands that, and he's taken that risk.
Give you some Tylenol. You sleepy from the Demerol?
I guess. Yeah.
The extreme toxicity of the LAC-IL-2 therapy has characterized it since the beginning.
Oh, boy, what a change.
It's just water.
And,
Okay, take your time. It's all right. Okay, good.
oh. That's one way to shut me up, I think.
Interleukin-2 causes the blood vessels to leak, sometimes triggering sudden and life-threatening drops in blood pressure. But the worst of the side effects usually occur when the LAC cells are given back to the patient.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Still shaking?
Yeah.
Yeah, you will shake for a few minutes. Mr. Cross, have the chills gotten any better?
I think.
Is it better or worse?
I think it's not worse, no.
Same?
Maybe. Not the same.
It's almost done.
"45 minutes later, only a few cells remain.
Intellectually, I know that it's going to stop. They're going to get better. But while it happens, it's difficult to watch. No one likes to see anybody that uncomfortable. And as soon as it's over, you start saying, okay, you know, what happened was good. You know, you're helping medical research. You're helping the patient. But you don't think of those things while it's going on. You just think that you have a patient that's really uncomfortable, and you're their nurse, and you're just trying to make them, you're responsible for them. And you're just trying to make them as comfortable as possible.
You feel weak as a kitten. My arms feel like got lead weights on them. And during all my shivering and shaking, the calves of your legs, you know, you're tensing, and my jaw muscles were aching. It just isn't a very pleasant, you know, you're shivering and cold, and yet shouldn't be because I've got about 4 or 5 blankets on. But I got another dose of Demerol, and all the shakes have gone away, and I feel quite relaxed now. I was sick a few times, but the nausea seems to have gone away, and I just feel tired, weak. That's about all I can tell you, I'm afraid.
5 days later,
You're laying me out.
Neville has now had 3 bags of LAC cells dripped into his body, which has bloated up. His skin is dry and peeling.
Your eyes look like they're really bothering you.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, they're dry. That's vicious stuff.
We're certainly seeing a lot of the biological effects of IL-2 in Mr. Cross. Certainly he has shown the remarkable facial redness which we see, and that is moving on to become this scaling, itching dermatitis, which is really very troublesome to patients. He also has the gastrointestinal effects. He's nauseous, he's vomiting, he's having some diarrhea. You feel tired?
Yeah, very.
But with the side effects are some welcome changes in the large tumor on his neck.
Well, I'm so bloated, I don't know what's what now.
Yeah,
It certainly feels soft.
I must say. There are a couple of
Soft.
things about this. One is it's a lot softer,
Yeah.
and the second is you may want to try it. You can start to feel a couple of different sections to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know, my guess is that his tumor is responding. It's smaller, it's softer, it's beginning to separate into different sections. I think these are all the first signs of a biological response, of a clinical response to the tumor.
A month has gone by. Neville's been at home in Toronto getting over the therapy's side effects. He's back for a checkup.
Okay, Mr. Cross, step up, face the board. Just roll your shoulders forward.
This is the critical moment. The clinical trials so far suggest that if LAC-IL-2 is going to work at all, it works most during the first few weeks after treatment.
3,
What we've got here is the pre-treatment chest x-ray and the 4-week following treatment chest x-ray. I get these measurements here as being about 22 millimeters by about 17. Today, we really can't measure this very accurately. I have some good news about the x-ray, which is that, in fact, the nodule in your lung is considerably smaller.
Is that right?
It's actually hard to even see it. And the only real concern is that this appears to be swelling more than it's
that certainly in the last, I've noticed in the last 10 days or so, it seems to have swollen quite considerably from when I left the hospital.
It's unusual to see what we call a mixed response. That is, one area getting dramatically better and another area perhaps progressing. We know that it shrank dramatically during the therapy, but it hasn't persisted very long, if this is in fact due to tumor growth. A lot of things going on we don't.
The ambiguous result of Neville Cross's first experience with lack IL-2 mirrors the ambiguity the treatment itself began to encounter as the number of patients treated grew. Rosenberg's early experience at the NCI had shown dramatic tumor shrinkage in roughly a third of his patients. But this response rate slipped lower as the results of confirmatory trials began to come in. In late 1986, a sharp criticism of the whole approach was published in a leading medical journal and received wide publicity. Its author, a respected cancer researcher, claimed that the toxicity and expense of the therapy exceeded the value of the 15 to 20% response rates it was then achieving.
So this to me really leaves me totally unimpressed. And what makes me more unimpressed is the extraordinarily high price in toxicity that a patient has to pay to get this 15% response rate, and the great cost in healthcare dollars, in research efforts that have to be devoted to this very small return. So I have a problem with what we know is the treatment ability of this specific lac IL-2 program.
I had said it was not the cure for cancer right from the beginning, but when it turned out that the realization sunk in that this was a step, but not the complete answer, I think there was disappointment. Now, I must say I was shocked by the vehemence of the criticism that was raised towards this about 6 months later, raised towards the toxicity, and even the statement that, in fact, this treatment approach should be discontinued.
I get really upset when I hear the criticisms of the treatment. I know that other doctors have been critical of it in terms of it being too toxic and that it's not worth putting the patients through. It's been worth it for me, and I feel as though it's my life that they're talking about. When they talk about it not being worth it, they're saying to me that my life isn't worth going through some tough times to save. And that's awfully hard for me to listen to because I've been working for a long time to stay alive, and this is the first thing that's come through in a long time that has that possibility for me.
Looks like everything is coming just perfectly. That's wonderful.
Any cancer patient that enters into a research program, I think, has this attitude that they have chosen to take a part in this research program. They're proud that they're in this research program, and they have great hope for it. I think we have to justify that hope.
For people who enroll in clinical trials, it is usually a last hope. Jody Johnson found out she had melanoma in 1983. She now has tumors in her abdomen that can't be removed by surgery. There is no other effective treatment.
When I first got this in '83, I never thought it would come to this. I never thought it would get this far. I imagined it. I mean, it's only normal to imagine the worst, not dwell on it, but just to imagine that I might end up having to have some kind of treatment that's experimental still. I mean, I know I'm kind of a guinea pig, but I don't really look at it that way because I'm just in there to get better. And I think I'm mostly scared that I might have a reaction that will harm me in some way, physically or mentally, or kill me. But basically, it's something I have to do, so I'm going to do it. I mean, I could be cured from this. And that is pretty thrilling, or at least almost cured. 80%, we've talked percentages, maybe 90%, maybe 50%, 40. But maybe it'll get it. Maybe interleukin will get it. I don't know.
Hi, Jody. How are you?
Good.
How's it going today?
Good.
Good.
It's like nothing.
It's like nothing?
Yeah.
Her treatment begins with a collection of her lymphocytes.
Actually, it's gone really well. You've had very good cell yields.
That's what I heard.
I was just in the lab. Yeah.
What did I get yesterday, do you know?
I think it would have been about 10 bottles. You have
That's
34
good.
so far. Yeah,
Oh, that's
billions
good.
and billions, as we say. Isn't this a fantastic machine?
Yeah, it is.
I'm like a kid when I see this stuff.
Yeah.
I really, it's like Buck Rogers stuff.
I know, I feel like I'm in the future.
Yeah.
I don't. If the interleukin works at all, the way I look at it, it's going to put some more time onto my life. So that's the way I'm looking at it now. I feel like I'm going up a ladder, up these steps, and now I'm on the interleukin step. And hopefully, maybe it'll be the top. Maybe this will be the end of it.
On day 7, Jody's cells, turned into cancer-killing lac cells by IL-2, begin to drip back into her bloodstream.
Everybody's waiting.
With her husband and parents there to lend support, the first of Jody's lac cell infusions is completed with little trouble.
Oh, it's almost gone. Nurse.
No, just a little bubble in there, kid.
One down.
But 3 days later, the therapy's notorious toxicity began to hit home.
I didn't expect it because the first 2 lac cell infusions were uneventful, and I said, oh, I'm home free now. But I shook a lot, and I spiked the temperature, and just felt kind of miserable.
At least you didn't react. Through the whole 2 weeks of treatment, Jody's mother has been constantly by her side.
You're peeling. Even your ears are peeling.
I think the last 4 or 5 days have been the hardest, so the waiting and just being scared that something's going to happen that's unexpected. You know, the less time I have, I'm just afraid something's going to happen. And last night my blood pressure dropped a little bit. I took a dip, and everything's under control now, but it just scared me for a while because you don't know. My body's so fragile.
But within a week of completing the treatment, Jody is back on her feet. Now the crucial question is how her cancer has responded.
I get scared about coming in for my checkup. Every time I come back for a checkup, I'm not really sure what I'm gonna hear. Even if it's good news, I'm kind of afraid. I'm not really sure how long it's gonna last.
The most important test is a CT scan. Her melanoma had spread to establish several large tumors in her abdomen. The CT scan will reveal if they have grown larger, stayed the same, or have shrunk.
Hold your breath.
I'm glad I'm here. I feel safe here, but at the same time, when I'm lying on the CAT scan table, I'm just wondering, I start praying all over again, and I think, why don't I pray every day, you know? I only pray when I'm on the table or... Because I don't think about my cancer every day, and when I get here, I get scared, and I just start hoping and hoping that it's gonna go away.
This scan shows her tumor before treatment, outlined in red. In today's scan, most of the same area is occupied by her stomach. Its contents white. The space above, black.
If you see, this is her stomach is being pushed up by it.
See, that's my stomach, that black spot.
Yeah. Okay. Right now,
And
look.
here, this
That's
is
my
the stomach filling out completely.
Oh my word. No wonder I've been picking out.
And And as you know, you've had a very, very nice response.
80,
At least
90%?
maybe even more than, yeah.
Shrinkage?
Yes,
Oh, God.
The largest mass has gone away.
that's right. So if only the Celtics were doing as well as you are.
Oh, God.
We'd like to go ahead with another course of treatment. We've discussed this before. What are your thoughts about that?
I'm ready today.
Okay.
Yeah,
And,
I'm definitely.
any fears about it? Any worries about it? It's something you've been thinking about. I know
Well, I just feel like it's something I have to do, and now that I've gone through it once, I know what to expect. So I'm ready.
Okay, good. Well, that's good to hear. The goal would be to shrink this even further and maybe to get rid of all of this disease.
I'm ready.
Okay, so are we.
I'm thrilled.
The retreatment of patients who've responded well to the first round of therapy has now become standard in the LAC-IL-2 trials. Neville Cross is back for a second round. His lung tumor has continued to shrink in the 4 months since his first treatment, but the mass on his neck has now broken through the skin.
Hi, Neville. How you doing? Good to see you.
Visiting is Tim Cummings, the social worker attached to the IL-2 program.
We getting the IL-2 and the LAC cells?
Yeah.
How's it going?
Well, I've had quite a bit of nausea this time. You know.
What did it feel like when you knew you were going to come back in for retreatment? What did it? How did you come to that decision?
Immediately.
Did you?
Oh yeah. I didn't even give it a second thought. Although I knew that I wasn't going to be all that happy, you know, because of the effects I was going to feel and everything else. But no, I didn't have any moments to give it any thought. I immediately said yes.
Even though you had a better idea of what it was going to be like coming back in the second time.
Yeah, because of the lack of alternatives.
5273, This is Colleen Clark. She too faces a decision about a second course of LAC-IL-2 therapy for melanoma. For her, the decision is harder. Her experience the first time around was devastating.
During the second week, I threatened, I was terrible. I threatened to pull that catheter out of my chest. And the reason I did that is because I just felt so miserable. I'd had enough. I figured I'd put up with enough. I just couldn't believe how bad I felt. I'd never felt that bad my entire life, physically, ever. Felt that bad.
It took a lot of us sitting by her bed, telling her, just begging her to go on and telling her, you know, how she, you know, Colleen, remember when you came in, how excited you were, you needed to do it, you wanted to do it. And it takes a nurse in there all the time to do that. And we rely a lot on Tim, who's our social worker, to work with them. And he does, and they get through it, and we get them through it, but everyone works as a team to do it with the doctors and Tim and the nurses and everybody, and we somehow get them through it.
You're all saying, you know, stay on, it's for your own good, and I was getting mad at people like, you know, what are you, crazy? You want me to feel this bad? But I wasn't reasoning, you know, I couldn't understand. You know, but as soon as I got home and I realized what they were doing, I could understand it, but at the time, I would have paid you $1 million to get me off that. I told them I would never go back. When I left the hospital the last time, I said I would never go back.
You're now 2 months following completion of the treatment, and at some point we're going to have to make some decisions. I know you've given it a lot of thought. What do you think about going through another course of treatment if we thought that were a possibility? You had a rough time the first time, and is it something you could handle?
You know, knowing what you actually go through and then having to go through it again, it's kind of a...
It's hard.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to, I guess I would. I mean, if it's everything's not... I guess if it worked and it's supposed to work even better and help even more, you know, I guess it's possible, very possible, yeah.
You know as well or better than any of us what the risks.
Going through all that and having it work makes it worth it. But going through all that and nothing happens, you know, heartbreaking. So I guess you can only hope that it does work.
But a few days later, Colleen's tumor began showing signs of regrowth. The team stepped up its efforts to persuade her to be retreated.
1 or 2 high.
I know you've had some feelings about coming in for the retreatment, which is to be expected. Is there one thing especially that you think about that makes it hard to come back?
I don't know if I'm going to get through it again. I'm just scared I've lost so much weight, and I don't think I'll make it through it a second time.
So you feel like you're weaker now than you were when you started before?
Yeah. I'm not ready to go through it, but I didn't have a choice.
Is that what it feels like?
Yeah, I told them I'd have to wait another month, but they couldn't give me a choice.
So you feel a little bit like you're being
I know I'm being pushed. I know but it's for my own good. Maybe, you know, even if I don't make it through, maybe someone else will live.
You think about that you're contributing to something that may help people in the future.
Yeah, that's something good. Although I wish, I'm selfish in a way, I wish someone had tested this out for me so it would be better when I went through.
Yeah. I think she probably notices the physical changes in herself, and she's heard it from the doctors that in fact the cancer's starting to grow again. And I think that's probably increased her anxiety and probably raised some questions in herself. Should I go through this again? If it's helped me for a while and now the cancer's growing again, should I put myself through this?
Colleen agreed to be retreated. But the CT scans taken just before her meeting with Tim showed her tumor had grown massively and invaded her liver. A patient whose liver is failing is unlikely to tolerate the toxicity of LAC-IL-2 therapy. The risk of the treatment killing her now outweighed the chance it would save her life. So despite Colleen's decision to be retreated, the research team reluctantly concluded she was no longer eligible for LAC-IL-2 therapy. She died a few weeks later. News of her death came at a time that was especially difficult for the New England Medical Center unit, where a patient had just died while receiving therapy.
This has been a difficult month. I think that we know that this is toxic treatment. We know that, and we expect to have problems with it. It just seems that we've had a lot of deaths amongst the patients we've treated in the past. And in addition, this month we did have a death of a patient who had just finished undergoing the first phase of the treatment. Wasn't receiving IL-2, but he was a man who was undergoing therapy, and we have to consider that to be a toxic death. So that's been hard on staff, and it's been hard on the other patients in the program.
One of those patients is Jody Johnson. She found out about Colleen's death just as she was beginning her second round of treatment.
When there's a death that occurs, like when Jody and I talked about Colleen's dying, I think it necessarily has to bring back to you, if you're involved in the IL-2, that it's experimental. And that, in fact, you're breaking a lot of new ground yourself, and that you're vulnerable. I think that's what it hits mostly, is that you're still vulnerable, that this IL-2 is not magic.
8 minutes to go, Jody.
Jody is near the end of her final batch of LAC-IL-2 cells.
Hi, Jody. Hi. This is it, honey. All right. Do you see that interleukin?
In this second round of treatment, the side effects have again been severe, but she should be back to normal after a week or so's rest.
How you doing?
Good.
You finished. Now to recover.
Yeah, that's no problem.
You look kind of tired now.
I always look tired lately. With these eyes, interleukin eyes.
Okay, how many new patients do we have this week?
The extreme toxicity of the therapy has been an important factor in slowing the availability of LAC-IL-2. Stephen Rosenberg's National Cancer Institute team was deluged with requests for treatment in the first months. Still today, they turn away many more patients than they accept, mostly because the patients are too sick to tolerate the therapy.
Presumably a pulmonary embolus showing up with arrhythmias. I think that he would not represent a good candidate for the treatment.
But there remain tens of thousands of cancer patients who might benefit from LAC-IL-2 if only they could get it.
Okay.
Early in 1987, the Food and Drug Administration allowed 34 additional cancer centers to start giving the treatment. Meanwhile, some cancer patients had taken the matter into their own hands. Clem Wright is an advertising executive from New York. He has incurable kidney cancer and spent months looking for help. Finally, he's driven here to rural Tennessee, where LAC-IL-2 therapy is for sale. His physician here is Dr. Robert Oldham. He quit prestigious jobs at the National Cancer Institute and in academia to sell experimental cancer treatments.
The idea came out of the problem of access. For more than a decade and a half, I've been involved in experimental medicine in the United States. And what's been clear is that only some people get access to our current system. Even though it's a taxpayer-supported system, only certain institutions get new drugs, and only certain patients through certain institutions and through certain doctors get access to new drugs. And as a university scientist, I recognized early that there were preferential access systems in the public sector for going for these new experimental approaches. So I've been interested in broadening that because I think patients need more access. We need to do more testing broadly. We need to try more new things more quickly in our society than we currently do.
The company Oldham founded is Biotherapeutics, today dedicating new laboratory facilities.
We visualize this operation as a partnership between our investors, our staff, and our patients. And we see it as a family affair where we've been able to bring a certain amount of private sector investment capital to bear on a problem which will affect 1 in 4 of the people in this room and nearly every family in the United States.
The major problem we have in your particular case is the fact that
Clem Wright's one remaining kidney is in bad shape. Because of this, it's very unlikely he would be admitted into any of the government-sponsored trials of interleukin-2.
Cause kidney problems. So there's a little bit of unpredictable there in terms of what the effect of the interleukin-2 will be on your remaining kidney function.
What the hell have I got going for me without something?
Clem Wright's case points up one of the controversial aspects of selling experimental cancer therapies. Should he be given the treatment because he's medically eligible or because he's prepared to pay for it?
I well know the seriousness. But man, I don't want to just dribble away. I want to try something.
It seems to me that I would not want to be in the position of trying to make already ethically difficult decisions or suggestions to patients with the additional complicating profit motive. The fact if I treat the patient, I make more money than if I don't treat the patient. And if I don't treat enough patients, my job may be on the line at the end of the year. Now, maybe Dr. Oldham can deal with that in a better way than I would. I guess the point I'm making is that I don't even want to have to deal with that.
Those kinds of things are part of being alive. And we could enter patients on our protocols because they can pay for them, or we could enter them because they're medically eligible. We know we do it for the latter reason. The medical eligibility comes first. The question of how to pay for it comes second. And so we're comfortable with what we do, but we're going to be subject to that criticism all the way along.
And here is the contract. This is between you and Biotherapeutics.
The payment Biotherapeutics patients make are for the laboratory costs of activating their cells, $19,400.
We request the $19,400 up front. And the reason for this is...
In the NCI-funded trials, these costs are borne by the government. Since most insurance companies exclude research therapies from coverage, here it's usually the patients who pick up the tab.
For this 3/4 or 1/3 into
It's
the problem.
not necessary to have the only way to have research available for it to come through the taxpayer system. We think it's okay, reasonable, ethical, correct for patients to fund research on their own behalf if they choose to do so.
I think the issue with for-profit clinical research in general is that we really have to talk about unproven therapy and whether or not one should be allowed to sell as a marketable commodity hope rather than substance. Because by definition, experimental therapy is in fact just that. It's unproven therapy. It is therapy for which there may be very good rationale, but for which there is no good evidence that it's effective. The cancer patient represents a totally exploitable market, if you will. They are people dying of malignancy, and clearly they would want to do anything to get treated.
At this point, I don't really expect to find a tumor and just disappear. I mean, Mandrake doesn't wave a wand and everything disappears. But to me, progress is going to be a shrinkage, a reduction. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen that way. I believe it.
Clem Wright's tumor has shown no signs of shrinkage since IL-2 therapy. Neither has it grown. Whether the treatment is helping is impossible to say. This question of whether or not LAC-IL-2 works is obviously the most important one of all. From time to time, the major researchers in the field get together to compare results. So far, the best results are for patients with malignant melanoma and kidney cancer. In about 20 to 25% of such patients, tumors shrink dramatically. In some patients, there has been a complete disappearance of their tumors. This is something new in the treatment of cancers that have spread through the body. While some chemotherapy drugs can shrink some tumors for a while, rarely do they cause them to disappear. Kathy Donahue's tumors, at her latest checkup, have almost entirely disappeared. She is one of 220 patients treated so far by Rosenberg's group.
We've had 16 patients that have had the complete regression of all of their metastatic cancer. Another 26 that have had the kinds of responses that Kathy has had, the virtually complete disappearance of all of her tumor. There are a host of patients like Kathy who have shown good responses. Unfortunately, they're a minority. 3/4 or so of the patients we treat do not show that kind of response, and our major challenge for the future is to increase the potency of this therapy. Okay, you let me know if it hurts at all.
Many different approaches are being explored to increase the effectiveness of interleukin-2-based therapies. One of the most promising is being pursued by Steven Rosenberg himself. He's here operating to remove a melanoma tumor from a patient. The idea is to make more potent tumor-killing lymphocytes than LAC cells by looking within the tumors themselves for lymphocytes already attacking the cancer. These cells are then treated with IL-2 and given back to the patient. Other strategies for improving potency involve combining interleukin-2 with other lymphocyte messenger molecules or with other drugs. There is in the field a conviction that the original Rosenberg LAC-IL-2 therapy may already be outmoded, that it's just the beginning.
Right now, this is the Model A of this treatment, and I can't believe that we need to give it this way. I also can't believe that it can't be made much, much better. If this treatment has activity in breast cancer or lung cancer, we'll have to develop something which is less toxic. There are too many patients. For every melanoma patient, there are 10 or 15 new lung cancer patients a year and another 10 breast cancer patients. It's hard to imagine giving this treatment in its current form to that number of people.
Jody Johnson is now well recovered from the side effects of her second round of LAC-IL-2 therapy.
During the 4-week wait, I feel like I have free time, and I don't think about it. I just think that I feel good and I'm getting better. But the closer I get to another checkup, I feel like about 3 days before I come in, I feel like I start getting nervous and angry and scared, and all that stuff comes back. And right about now, I feel like I'm going to explode. Just the tension is just incredible.
This CT scan is critical. Only if her tumors continue to shrink is it likely that the LAC-IL-2 therapy is proving effective.
I feel like I'm always on a roller coaster going through these treatments. Or going in for the results is like going up a hill and you're going to come down the other side and you don't know if it's going to be the thrill of when your stomach turns or whether you're going to throw up. Isn't that a terrible analogy? Because you hear such awful news. It's hard to adjust. I go along on my free time between treatments and the results, and I feel like $1 million. I feel like I'm going to live forever, and then I come in, and I never know what I'm going to hear.
This is the CT scan from today. I just came back from going over it with the radiologists. Basically, there are two things. The disease in the retroperitoneum is probably smaller, and you can see it there on either side of the aorta. The disease here in the pelvis is probably the same size. They're going to go over it more carefully and we'll get an official reading. But so I think considering this is 4 weeks following completion of her course, it's probably pretty good.
Okay.
And I have some good news.
Oh, good.
So before we go into other things, the CT scan shows that some of the disease is stable and the rest of it seems to be quite a bit smaller.
Oh, good.
So that in far, really, I think we're where we would like to be a month after treatment. So.
Great. And I just wanted to tell you that it's not that I'm not excited about that, but I had this idea of 100%. You know, you can't help but think of that.
Yes,
So.
that's known as the home run school of oncology. And while we all would like to belong to
Yeah.
it, the fact is that usually we have to deal with something in between.
So I'll come back in 8 weeks and I'll be tested again. And at that point, if there's still cancer and I want to come in for a third treatment, I can.
Let's see what happens. If the disease stays the same size, then we should talk about it.
Yeah.
If the disease continues to get smaller, then I think we would clearly be in favor of that. And of course, if the disease gets larger, then we need to talk about other alternatives. You know, one of the things we tell people is if we can even give them more time, even if we can't cure them with this particular approach to treatment, it does allow for other opportunities for experimental approaches in the future. You know, we'd all like to see things move more quickly, but this is a field where you know your failures very quickly, and you know your successes only in the long term, years later. So it's not a field for people who are into instant gratification.
I'm not.
You like
I swear I'm not.
You like long-term gratification.
Yes.
Jody's cancer showed no significant shrinkage in her subsequent checkups. She was not offered a third course of LAC-IL-2. Instead, she's begun a new experimental therapy. Neville Cross's neck tumor also failed to respond to a second treatment. He died of his cancer 6 months after his LAC-IL-2 therapy ended. Like Colleen Clark, one of the tragic majority of patients receiving interleukin-2. Despite all its promise, still a long way short of a miracle.
I think in following these patients, and following Colleen Clark and Neville Cross and Jody Johnson through the treatment, I hope that people get an understanding for what it's like to have cancer, for what it's like to have a disease for which there really is no good treatment, how hard it is to give this type of experimental treatment, how hard it is to undergo experimental therapy, and how for every victory there are so many defeats. This is a very tough thing to do. It's a very tough group of diseases to have. And the reason we go through the agony of this treatment and all of the complexities of the bureaucracy around it is to end these kinds of diseases. People shouldn't have to suffer like this. And if we can help people then the whole process is worthwhile. But I think that anyone who's seen this process now in these 3 people will understand how complicated and how difficult it is and how superficial the hype and the raised expectations around these types of new treatments often are. This is the reality behind the hype.
Next week, we look for signs of progress against one of the major killing cancers. And we find enough to call our program Breast Cancer, Turning the Tide. For NOVA's Battles in the War on Cancer, I'm Jane Pauley of NBC News. Good night. For more information on interleukin-2, call 1-800-4-CANCER.
For a transcript of this program, send $4 to NOVA, Box 322, Boston, Massachusetts, 02134. Please be sure to include the show title. Major funding for NOVA is provided by this station and other public television stations nationwide. Additional funding was provided by Allied Signal, a technology leader in aerospace, electronics, automotive products, and engineered materials. And by the Johnson & Johnson family of companies, supplying healthcare products worldwide.